Election day is over. You'd think we'd be sleeping, but we're all political junkies, so we haven't gone to bed yet, basically. We're going to talk about what's happened in these elections, what it might mean for the future, and a few other really important topics. So we're glad you're with us in the smoke-filled room. Let me introduce our three special guests for the week. We have Mark Batinick. He's a former House Republican floor leader in Illinois. He's currently a pollster and Politico. Mark, glad to have you. And it's fun to have you in our ranks now, not being elected anymore. Now you're one of us. It's great to have you.
Happy to be on. Looking forward to the discussion today.
Awesome. We have Nathan Hoffman. He's the Senior Director of State Policy and Advocacy. I know he's got a lot to say about the Chicago school board elections, let alone other topics. We're going to have some fun on that. What's up, Nathan?
Hey, how's it going?
It's good, man. It's good. I'm just looking forward to maybe sleeping at some point. Patrick Pfingsten, everybody's favorite guest to love and hate at the same time. And we're glad to have him. He's the founder, editor, and producer of the Illinoize. He's also the morning show host for WMAY. And he's got a new podcast, the Ground Game Podcast. So if anybody's sleeping the least of us, it's probably Pfingsten. What's up, dude?
Gentlemen and Chris, hello.
Well, speaking of and Chris, we've got the Michael, the core political expert that everybody likes. Then we've got Chris, the core political expert that everybody kind of likes if they have to. What's up, guys?
Going good. How are you?
I'm good. Chris, you all right over there?
Not looking to make friends in this business, Collin. Never have been, never will be.
Well, you've succeeded, my friend. So I wish I had that mission accomplished George Bush gift that I could just pull up right here for you, make you feel all good. Because I know you love Bush, too. You love W.
Yeah, definitely the greatest president of in American history.
The awesome thing is that in transcriptions, sarcasm doesn't come through. So that quote can be clipped for anything we want to use in the future. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk elections. We have to start at the top of the ticket. Obviously, election night was maybe a surprise for some. I think for the people on
a disaster.
For the people on this podcast, at least for most of us, it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but there's at least one of us, I think, who may end up being surprised. To some, President Trump is now 45 plus 47. To others, he's 666. But either way, whatever number you might say you want to give to the guy, he is our next president of the United States. The Republicans have retaken control of the U.S. Senate, so the filibuster is safe. It looks like at the moment we are on path to retain the majority in the House, but it isn't for sure yet as we record this on Thursday. Big national election for Republicans starting with Trump. Who wants to jump in with your thoughts?
I'll go.
Butler, go ahead, Mark.
So one of the things most of what we're polling is state races, county races, and we did a couple of congressional things. But one of the things that I talked to many people about, I was at I was one of the panelists at an Edgar Fellows event. We tweeted this, and we might have talked about this on the show. The thing that we saw is that if we polled 100 people, only 4 or 5 were changing their party affiliation from their 2020 vote. And out of those 4 or 5, one person was a 2020 Trump voter becoming a 2024 Kamala voter. 3 to 4 people were going from Trump to Biden. And I told everybody, I said, I don't know what this means. All I can tell you is there's 3 to 4 times as many people that switch going from a Biden to Trump than from Trump to Harris. I don't think DuPage County and the suburbs of Chicago should be drastically different than Philadelphia or Detroit or other areas. Don't know what it means nationally, but that's what we are seeing. So I think that played out. I'm surprised more people didn't pick up on that. I talked to other pollsters about it. They called it statistical noise and stuff. And I'm like, it's every poll. So it's not like we made some big claim or projection on it. I take that back. Matt Podgorski made a projection on it, and I told him to take it down because I thought that was, we do things based on data, not based on our gut. But he put up a tweet that said 312 electoral seats. And I said, put that on your personal page. We're not here to guess, we're data-based. But he ended up being right, and I think that was one of the big movements. The other thing that I would add to that is that in our polls, we saw compression. When I was on over the summer, we were seeing our candidates running like 6 points ahead of Trump all the time. And we saw compression between the Trump-Harris and what you were seeing like a state rep or a county candidate at. And I wasn't sure if that compression was our people coming down or Trump going up or a combination of both. But at this point, it looks like Trump just gained ground since the summer. So those are kind of the inside baseball things that we saw that we were talking about for the last few months. You kind of saw it come to fruition nationally, but that's what we were seeing on the ground here in Illinois.
One of the big takeaways I have from this election is that I've talked before about the demographics and which ones are moving to Trump. which ones are moving to Harris. Doesn't look like a lot of demographics are moving to Harris outside of maybe some suburban counties have moved left to Harris, but it was very barely. You're seeing a big shift amongst Latinos, a huge shift amongst Arab American voters, Trump winning Dearborn, Michigan, and a lot of very Arab majority places in the United States. I want to see Cook County precinct results. I want to see how Trump did in Bridgeville. I want to see how Trump did in Burbank, because I'm assuming that's going to be taking place across the board right now. So very interesting stuff here. And the Republican Party has an opportunity with this vast coalition to reach out to voters who are coming on board to the Republican Party in ways they've never seen before. We're seeing Chinese voters in the city of Chicago voting Republican. We're seeing Hispanic voters voting to the tune of 33% in the 14th ward Republican. This is stuff that never has happened before. So the Republican Party has an opportunity. Will they screw it up? Probably. But if we actually had resources, we actually had money and those sorts of things in time, this would be very interesting. The second thing I always want to point out.
Before we go to the second thing, you keep saying voting Republican. They voted Trump. Let's not say they all voted Republican. They voted Trump. Let's be clear.
Well, you understand. Okay, yes, you're right. These people are voting for Trump. And the Republican Party has an opportunity, because these people are willing to vote Trump, maybe to reach out to them, maybe to do some things to get them fully on board with the Republican Party. Is that going to happen? You know me, I'm a pessimist. I don't think it is. But it's an opportunity for the Republican Party to take advantage of.
This is not some great coalition of the Reagan Revolution. This is a cult around one guy, and then a whole bunch of other people who were so pissed off at Democrats that they voted for him out of protest, because they hate Joe Biden. They think Joe Biden has been an abject failure, which he has. And they think Kamala Harris is a complete extension of that. And every time Kamala Harris opened her mouth on the economy and couldn't talk about the price of milk and eggs or the price of gasoline, and instead said, I grew up a middle-class kid, it didn't connect. It showed how completely inauthentic she was. She didn't have an answer on immigration. She never broke with Biden on any of the worst foreign policy messes, specifically the Afghanistan withdrawal. And she just looked like a continuation of the mess of the last 4 years. And people said, you know what? To hell with this. I'm going for the other guy. Because apparently they forgot everything that went completely in chaos for those 4 years.
Well, anybody see that video clip of, I don't know if it was CNN or MSNBC or one of them, where like, okay, we're going to show you all the counties that flipped for Trump. And it was like, the whole map. Like, okay, now let's shift to the map of all those counties that flipped to Harris. And it was literally an empty map of the United States. And they're like, wait, none of them did? And it was like talking, wait, none to the producer. Like, this was a massive change in the electorate. Again, only, at least in Illinois, only at the top of the ticket, but we'll talk about that shortly. Our buddy John Gioccaris made this really easy for me and put out some of the exit poll stats, and I want to give you some of these. Urban America didn't change much. It still broke 60-40 Democrat, but in suburban America, it went 50-48 Democrat. Last time it went 51-47 Republican. This time, back of the napkin math, it's a 3 or 4 point improvement in the suburbs for Republicans. Latinos broke big time for more for Trump this time. Biden won it by a 2-1 margin last time. Harris only won Latinos by 6 points this time around. Young people, same deal. Biden won it 60-36 last time. Harris only won it by 11 this time. Independents, again, same deal. Biden won it by 13 last time. Harris only won it by 3. We're seeing married men broke more for Trump. Married women broke more for Trump. You're just seeing almost every demographic significantly move towards Trump.
And maybe most importantly, women in general. Harris underperformed Biden in 2020.
Yeah, 4 point change.
We thought this was going to be the girls versus boys election. Yep. And it turned out to be just a broad rebuke of what the Democratic Party is.
Well, and Mark, I want to ask you something about that, because in a lot of our polling, I had dozens of polls where it was weird to me over the last couple of years where I saw females becoming more conservative than males in some of these polls, especially in a number of topics. I kept seeing that more and more and more. And now, again, as Patrick just said, you just saw a 4 point shift amongst females for Trump against Harris, when you had a female on the top of the ticket for the Democrats, and you had this was the abortion election. I was seeing it in polling over the last couple of years. I'm curious what you saw.
We saw the same thing, but we actually polled things like men and women's sports. This stuff's insane, and I'm going to push back on Patrick. The data doesn't show what you're saying about people are voting for Trump but not down ballot, at least in the suburbs. There's not a lot of places where Trump dramatically up. There's not a single spot where I see where Trump dramatically outperformed a fairly contested election. I don't know what the city's like, but it was pretty much up and down. I mean, I'm looking at DuPage County. The county-wides did a point or two better than what did countywide. I looked at the Gabby Shanahan race on a precinct by precinct basis yesterday, and it was like 1 or 2 points either way. So, sure, women care about abortion, but they care about inflation. They care about we actually should in Illinois, we should have leaned more, and I'm not even saying during the campaign, we should have leaned more into the men and women sports thing on the state side. If I have any critique of what the Republicans did from a campaign standpoint, it isn't what they did during the campaign. It's what they did leading up to the campaign to show a glaring difference between what Republicans stand for and how whack job left the Democrats have gone. We saw what you saw, Collin, and we definitely saw the shift at the younger level, and we also saw the shift away at the upper level where, the older women. I went back when that Ann Selzer poll came out and looked at all our polls, 65 plus women. Boy, we were losing those people big time. But we did see the gains at the younger parts, and it wasn't the traditional curve that you would see with demographics when you were looking at things this election.
My point is, Mark, that if you look at the exits, economy was absolutely the top of the list. It was absolutely number one. It was absolutely and that was
when the Democrats.
That was a projection of Democrats and not necessarily for Trump. That was my point. Nobody said I love Trump's economic plan because he doesn't have one other than tariffs, which are just going to rise on everyone.
Well, let's have some fun. I'm going to push back again. They were like, you know what? I don't like the guy, but his economy is better, so that's why I'm voting for him. They were specifically voting for him in spite of the fact they hated him, specifically because of where he was on the economy.
And Mark, to that point, I have a mutual friend of my wife and I, who's pretty far left on Facebook, and she posted on election night, she's like, I'm so afraid for the world that we're leaving to my daughter. I've had to have 2 abortions. She's crying right now because what if she needs to have an abortion? But hey, milk and eggs will be cheaper. I mean, even she, while saying like, well, great, like she even admitted that with Trump in the White House, inflation's going to be better, the economy is going to be better. I thought that was pretty telling that even a far left voter like that who voted, she was one of the 11% who voted on abortion, and yet even she admitted that the economy is going to be better under Trump. Like the fact that was a foregone conclusion was clearly a problem for Harris. Chris, Nathan, Michael, I know we've been dominating the three of us. You guys have any thoughts before we go to the next topic?
My second thought, and I'll let Butler close the gap here because I know he's very excited. My second thought is always, we heard for months last year that we need to put in like Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, because Trump can't win the election. Trump won the election. Always have to point that out.
Well, since Collin's not in the picture, I'll say this now. I was wrong on that. I was one of those people that certainly believed, especially going back a year and a half ago, that Trump was not our best option. And I wonder what sort of coalition would have been under a Haley or a DeSantis. I will say one of the smartest things that I think Trump did was it wasn't just you were voting for Trump, you were voting for RFK and Make America Healthy. And there's a lot of like moderate voters that I've talked to, a lot of them that are like, hey, I don't know why Fruit Loops have to be so colorful and have all these dyes in it. I agree with that. They were voting for Elon Musk and free speech. They were voting for Tulsi Gabbard and all these other people. So I think kind of bringing on somewhat of a dream team. Joe Rogan bringing out the young bro vote. I love Patrick.
Listen, I'll be clear here. I mean, I don't think we were wrong on this. I mean, Chris, I know you want to take your victory lap and you're entitled to do so. But I think common sense and anybody who does data or politics for a living will tell you that we had anybody but Trump at the top of the ticket, they would have won by more, not less.
Well, that's not true at all.
Agreed.
You can't,
absolutely.
33% of the Trump electorate doesn't show up for Nikki
It doesn't
Haley.
matter. We won. It doesn't matter. We've got an hour and a half total. We could spend an hour on that. So let's just say we all disagree on that, but let's move on to more relevant things because it doesn't matter. Reality is Trump won.
I don't associate with that. I have been never Trump since 2015 and will remain that way because that is not who the Republican Party is. That is not what conservatism is. And the road that he has taken this party down will backfire. It will.
Well, let's look. I mean, let's look at Illinois. I mean, it was a significant improvement in Illinois. There are still vote by mails, late arriving vote by mails to come in. So these numbers are going to change in favor of Democrats to some degree. We don't know how much just yet. But at the moment, there's a 9-point improvement for Trump in the state of Illinois. That's pretty significant. I mean, he did the best that we've seen of any candidate for president in Illinois since GW in 2004. And frankly, if you look at it, maybe even better than as good as HW in 88. I mean, this was a huge improvement from Trump in blue states, including the state of Illinois. Right now, it's 9 points. It might end up being 7 or 8 points, but that's pretty significant. A couple other national things we got to talk about real quick. Pritzker's Think Big America went all in on abortion. On the one hand, we can talk about how clearly that wasn't the winning issue. So I think Pritzker probably deserves a little shade for that. On the flip side, he did get involved in a number of abortion referendums around the country and won 7 of them. So I think what we saw was that we talked about this on election night because somebody asked me, what does this mean? That abortion wasn't the big issue and yet all these abortion referendums won. And I pointed to the poll we did not that long ago on abortion where it talked about, if you talk about rights, Americans overwhelmingly want abortion to be legal. Beyond that, they want it to be safe. They vote for restrictions. And so when you talk about a referendum that says, should this be legal, it's going to pass overwhelmingly in most states in this country. But when you have candidates and elected officials who talk about common sense restrictions, now you say, okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. And that's why you see a disparity between the 11% who said that their vote for president or their vote this election was about abortion, while some of these abortion rights referendums won with 60, 70 plus percent of the vote. But Pritzker did at least get some wins on the referendums, and I'm sure he'll use that to buttress his national profile as he starts running for president.
He did not get Florida, though. Ron DeSantis beat him in Florida, so
there you go.
Well, I mean, it won a majority to vote, but you need 60% to pass the referendum.
Right. Like Illinois, by the way.
Right.
Which is going to be something that's going to come up shortly. So good previewing there, Mark. Last thing I want to bring up is just a comment, which is with Republicans in control of the White House and the Senate, one of my favorite memes that's come out in the past couple days is a picture from, I think it's a movie or something, I'm blanking right now, where everyone's just hitting the button. And it's like Republican senators saying yes to Republican 30-year-old conservative judges for the next 2 years. And they're all just hitting the button over and over and over and over. I mean, somebody who, the reason I bring this up is somebody who has to be the least happy with the outcome from Tuesday night has got to be Dick Durbin. As the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee now, but he won't be very soon, he just had pretty much all his power stripped away. And we all know he's going to be up on the ballot in 26. Does this impact whether or not he'd be willing to run again? When at this point, for the next 2 years, he's going to have to watch the Republicans on the committee put through conservative judge after conservative judge. It remains to be seen, but the speculation will certainly hit double time now on whether or not Durbin runs again.
Yeah, I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked if he runs again. Shocked.
Well, as I've said, I'll believe it when I see the press release or the obituary. But that's the most concerning thing, frankly, is that, well, if Trump would have won in 2020, he would have had a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. So he wouldn't be able to get anything accomplished now. Now he's probably going to have the trifecta, and the Republicans are going to be pushed through all these judges. If you care about judges and you're a Democrat, you should be concerned about that, because Lord knows the type of people the Republican establishment are going to push through to be a judge at the age of 30 years old.
Well, the good news, if you're rooting for chaos or gridlock, is that no matter who wins the House, it's probably going to be a hurdle for Trump and the Senate either way. Because one, if the Democrats manage to hold it or take it, which I don't think they will, but maybe, they will vote with Hakeem Jeffries lockstep like they did with Pelosi. They will block everything that they can. Republicans have not proven, at least House Republicans have not proven that they can tie their shoes. And you have these 7 or 8 Freedom Caucus clowns that are willing to tank the government at their whims. And they could very well, if John Thune and the White House come to some sort of an agreement that they can get some big bill passed, get a budget passed, you've got your Marges and your Lauren Boeberts running around trying to tank the government on a daily basis. And the House is just an incendiary device waiting to pop off.
Look, that's all fine and dandy, except for you have Trump in the White House.
Right. Yeah.
And those people are not going to push back on Orange Man. I just don't see it. That's number one. Number two, Chris. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I think they will, because if you have to negotiate some type of budget deal and it doesn't check every box that the House Freedom Caucus wants, it's going to be a problem. In theory, it might be a good
Their own
thing.
bylaws. It's in their own bylaws.
Right, exactly. So,
but I think the point is they have to.
Not
I mean, we have 2 years. I mean, the Republicans in Congress and the Republicans in DC have 2 years. That's it. Because it's pretty clear in 26, it's going to be a rough election for Republicans. Maybe not, but most likely it will be. If we're going to have trouble holding on to Congress and holding on to the Senate, everyone knows we've got 2 years to get stuff done. So if, to Mark's point, I mean, if anybody can get those people in line, it's Trump, and he's going to have to do it because you get 2 years and that's it.
Look, I want to go back to something you said to Chris about it's a good thing he didn't get elected in 2020. Completely agree. And let me tell you why. And Patrick, I think this is important for you to understand too. If he was elected in 2020, he wouldn't have had the Senate, he wouldn't have had the House, and he wouldn't have done anything. What happened in the last 4 years is the left was exposed. I was deeply pissed off about the president's lack of action on January 6th. You know what pisses me off more? The fact that the deep state, the media, Twitter, Facebook censored the Biden laptop. And don't shake your head, because they did. And the fact that they suppressed
That's such bullshit, Mark. You know that's bullshit.
What? That's a bullshit.
No.
The media said it was fake.
It doesn't
weren't
matter.
saying that it was fake.
And you tried to overthrow the government.
What about the FISA warrants after Trump was elected to eavesdrop him? Are you really telling me that you're just okay with the FBI signing something saying the Hunter laptop is fake when it wasn't? And had that laptop been come out,
I don't care about Hunter Biden's dick pics.
You're concerned about both, and you're concerned about one.
I don't care about Hunter Biden's dick pics.
Let me jump. Hold on, guys. Let me jump in here. Hold on, guys. Let me jump in here for a second, because I think I want to bring us to something that to me resonates across the aisle. When you talk about the media and all the other various conglomerates like the mainstream media, what I have heard from Republicans and Democrats, including my lovely wife who's watching our boy Teddy, so I can do this, even she said what really concerned her was that interview where, what was it, CNN, where they clearly edited what Harris had said, cutting out certain things, moving certain things around. And I've heard that from multiple people who are left of center who said, you know what, this is taking it too far. That what the media did to cover for Harris, never asking her any tough questions, trying to make sure she looked better. There were a number of people who voted as a giant middle finger to all of that. They weren't voting for Trump. They said, we're sick and tired of being told that we're all horrible humans, that we're sexist, misogynist, racist, blah, 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 that the media is going to cover for Harris, that they're going to edit interviews for her. I mean, there is a pushback to what's been done out of DC and sort of those power circles. There is absolutely pushback to that. And I don't think, Patrick, I think this part you may agree with, I don't think that's necessarily supporting Trump. I think that's supporting an FU to whatever this sort of establishment is of cut it out, let's stop doing this bullcrap.
What you're talking about is 60 Minutes, by the way, and it wasn't an interview. It was a package, and they always clip packages. That's how it goes back.
Yeah, but they move stuff around too. Don't even pretend
always
they did.
Do that. Go back to 2004, and they did it too. It's how that's how these packages work.
They don't do it for Republicans. They don't do it for Republicans.
Look it up on Twitter. CBS puts up a story when Trump says no tax on tips about how much it's going to destroy the budget, $52 million. 3 months later, Kamala offers the same thing, like, what a great idea. Kamala says no tax on tips. If you don't think that the media is biased, if you don't think that censoring with big tech is bad for America and free speech, I'm sorry, we are never going to agree on that. Never. And one of the best things that happened to this country is Elon Musk buying Twitter so we can get the true story.
I've been saying for 15 years that there's a national media bias. So this is not anything new. I'm just explaining what 60 Minutes does and does in every single one of their packages, which aren't straight interviews. And again, you can whine about Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff as much as you like. Biden's laptop does not matter. January 6th,
it did matter. I think
it did matter. 100%.
Nathan and Michael haven't had much of a chance to talk, so you two close us down, then we really need to move on.
No, I was just say I absolutely think the Hunter Biden laptop mattered in 2020. I think everything else that's happened since has mattered, and I also think you can be pro Trump and also pro FU to the Democrats, which is what I was, and that's the way I voted. I didn't vote for Trump in 2016. I didn't vote for Trump in 2020. I would walk over broken glass to vote for Trump in 2024, like I did. In part because of everything that we saw from the left and all, in the last 4 years, in large part because of how J.B. Pritzker handled COVID and how Lori Lightfoot handled COVID. This was the first election I didn't vote for a single Democrat. Most elections, there's usually one or two that I find that I vote for. No plans to vote for any Democrat anytime soon. So I just think that you don't have to be. I think you can vote for Trump. I don't like him personally, but I do think he had more of a substantive campaign. People on this call are going to disagree. I think he was more substantive this cycle, and you can disagree with that, but he was certainly more substantive than Kamala Harris. And you can also vote to give an FU to the deep state government.
Well, listen, anybody was more substantive than Kamala Harris. I'll simply say Trump was more substantive when he actually read from the teleprompter, which was only about 5% of the time. But I do concede your point. Michael, you get the final word, then we're moving on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could say it much better than what Mark did. I agree with everything that Batinick had to say. And on this media, bias. I mean, obviously, we've had a media bias for a long time. It's been an issue for, every Republican president, at least the last, 20 or 30 years. But I think it's at an unprecedented level with Trump. I mean, so many of these people just have Trump derangement syndrome. They're always looking for a reason to go after him. And that example on tax on tips where they said, if Trump touted no tax on tips, worst idea ever, according to CBS. Harris, copies Trump's plan, and they're like, oh, Harris is fighting for the American worker. It's like, well, how's it good when she does it, bad when he does it? This doesn't add up. And I think that a lot of people recognize that this cycle more so than they have in the past.
Well, Democrats have done a damn good job making, frankly, everyone in the world afraid of what Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to do. We now have 2 or 4 years to prove them wrong. And my hope is that we do it because the crazy things they've been saying about us, about how nut job we are, was not true. Now it's on us to not actually prove that they were right. So with that, let's go to Illinois, which is what we really need to be talking about. Here's what I want to say to our viewers and our listeners. If you want to have a recap of what happened in all the various races, look in the comment section or the description. I'm not sure where Lane's going to put it. Michael, Chris, and I did a recap video after the election. We went through pretty much all the races. We don't have time to do that on this podcast. So I'm going to have just an open-ended, let everybody who's here talk about the races they want to talk about versus sitting here for an hour going through every single race. We don't have time for that. So let me just introduce the conversation, which is in Illinois. What we saw is that at the moment we have gained no seats. We have lost no seats. On the hold seats, we're waiting for some results for Kevin Schmidt's district in 114, for Schweizer in 104, Amy Grant in 47, McLaughlin in 52. It looks like Schmidt's probably going to be okay based on everything we're looking at. Morning McLaughlin in 52 likely will be okay, though still got to keep an eye on it. Amy Grant in 47, we don't know yet. 500 votes. It could happen. It could flip. So that one is certainly a right to be nervous about. It's less than 1%. Brandon Schweizer, it's a 771 vote difference. But Champaign County has been so bonk nuts crazy since election night. I wouldn't be shocked if suddenly they go, oh, we found 3,000 votes. So nobody can say they know exactly where 104 is going to end up. So there are 4 seats Republicans currently hold that are still at risk. I could see us keeping them all. I could see maybe something flipping in 1 or 2 of them. We're going to find out in the coming days. Meanwhile, Haas, San Alitro, Laha, and some of the others won big. So it's really those 4 seats we're looking at. On the pickup side, Republicans did not pick up any seats. Liz Bishop came the closest in 76, only down by 1%. That'll grow a little more as VBMs come in, but she came very close. 97, Gabby Shanahan was the second priority by Republicans and came pretty close, 4%. I'm sure we'll talk about that race. Rebeletti lost by 7, Keevan 8, Desi 7, Phil Nagel 12, Joe McGraw 7. So none of the rest were particularly close. We really didn't come close to picking up seats in this election other than maybe 76. So we'll talk about our next 2 topics are to talk about broad, high level. Why did this happen? Do Democrats have regrets? Could Republicans have done things differently? So I want to say to our participants here, let's save those comments for the next 2 topics. Here it's just, are there any races you want to talk about? Give some information. Say you thought it should have gone better or worse, or give kudos to somebody. This is your chance. Pick a race. If you could, though, just give the district. That way Lane can bring up the map for our viewers. Not everybody follows this like the nerds we are. So if you don't give the district, they may not know what we're talking about. But what do you guys want to talk about? Pick a race and jump in.
I'll go 97, talk about my district. I got to give a shout out to Gabby Shanahan, who worked so hard. I know they put a fair amount of money into that race, but the fact that Harry Benton had to basically sell his soul and then put his soul on TV and lie, just completely mislead, just to the extent that he did in order to win that race, I wonder if he won the battle and lost the war. Because I think the type of campaign that he ran and the people that I've talked to in the city, that stuff is evergreen. People are going to know how he campaigned, what he did, and what a hypocrite he was. Everybody's talking about hypocrite Harry now. So the next time I see him, I'm just going to ask him if it was worth it. I couldn't do that. I absolutely vetoed things that were nothing near the kind of stuff that he put out. But I wanted to make sure that when I was running a campaign, that I could back every single word that was on any flyer that went out by me or anything that I said. So Gabby worked so hard; she deserved better. Maybe if there was a concentration of resources, but she ran a really good campaign. So I just want to give a shout out to her because I know it was a tough night and probably still is stinging pretty bad.
Well, and I'll join you in that. I just want to give kudos to Gabby. We've talked a lot of these podcasts about where money could be allocated, and as you said, we'll talk about that in a couple topics. But as a candidate, Gabby was one of our best recruits. She worked her butt off. As you said, if somebody deserved to win, it was Gabby. Her team was great. Kudos to you. Kudos to Cavers and some of the others that were involved in that race. Y'all worked your butts off, and nobody has any problems with any of you guys. You guys did what you needed to do, and you ran a solid race. So kudos to you all.
So I was in 8 different districts over the last weekend, from Kankakee to Champaign to the Metro East to the Quad Cities and back to the suburbs. I put 1,000 miles on the car over the last weekend and got to sit with a lot of candidates in that and be on the ground, walk neighborhoods with some of them. What I'll tell you is I didn't know Kevin Schmidt very well before the last couple of weeks. I think I've said hello to him at the State House a couple of times, but he hasn't really been somebody that's had much of a presence. I'm blown away by his understanding of his district, by his personal understanding of every voter, every issue, who he needs, how he understood the data better than nearly any candidate I've seen in a State House level. Who knows how long? I would echo the kudos to Gabby Shanahan for a party that is old and white, she and male for the most part. With my white beard sitting here, she is a vision of what the Republican Party can look like as a young mom who isn't some psycho Marjorie Taylor Greene type person. She has a future. I don't dislike Harry Benton like Mark does. I like Harry fine. But that's a tough task, and he's obviously had a gazillion dollars behind him. It is really hard to overcome $925,000 in Chicago broadcast TV over the last 2 weeks. So that's a fine. You can say that, but I see the ratings points, and that I think that was a really good performance for her, even though it didn't pan out. And I would say Brandon Schweizer was a surprise at his. Not necessarily that it's close, but I think there was a point that in this campaign, a lot of us thought he was toast. Just that Clem was bringing in all the money. House Republicans weren't putting a lot of resources in down there. He's a political neophyte. I don't know that he'll hang on because Champaign does typically have a lot of vote by mail. And those Southwest Champaign voters are not breaking his way normally. He did really well in Vermilion County, and that might save him. But he really showed some gumption sticking with it in the end here.
Hey, Patrick, just because you've come on my podcast a number of times and had my team say Patrick was right, would you return the favor at all, considering both Michael and I picked Brandon Schweizer as one of our 3 locks to win, and you even offline gave me grief for that? Would you maybe say that we were at least somewhat right on that?
Talk to me in 2 weeks when it's over. I don't know what the numbers are going to look. He hasn't won yet.
So you're saying you wouldn't reciprocate that? We've been very nice to you over the past.
I will say Michael Butler's praise of Kevin Schmidt for the last 2 years has been right on, and Michael was right. What I'll say is Schweizer deserves credit for the campaign that he's run on a shoestring budget. without much political experience. If he holds on, great, congratulations, you're right. But we're still not there yet.
All right, will you give me credit for Jackie Haas then? I mean, you fought me for a year saying Haas was more in trouble than I thought. Will you give me credit for that one then?
Sure. I mean, I thought House Democrats were going to go in on that race. I don't know why they didn't. I mean, especially with as much money as Joyce put into that district to boost his numbers up, he beat his 2020 number or his 2022 number. So I thought that the conditions in that district were right for something to happen, but House Democrats didn't invest, so House Republicans didn't need to invest, and it became a name ID thing. And of course, Jackie's got a good name ID there and did really well.
I mean, they did spend some money. Let's not pretend they didn't spend anything.
Like $500,000. That Billy Morgan got, I think, $500,000. So
yeah, I mean, they spent a good amount of money.
Talking in terms of television, but I hear what you're saying.
Everything's not TV. I know you like putting the money up in TV, but everything's not TV. Chris, Michael, Nathan, any races you guys particularly want to talk about?
I mean, obviously 114. I mean, that was a very strong performance by Kevin Schmidt. Right now, he's up about 4 points. Obviously, that'll kind of whittle down as some of these vote by mail and provisional ballots are processed. But I think at the end of the day, he's still winning, by probably 2.5 points. And Democrats went hard on that one. I mean, there was a lot of mail from LaToya. She was up on TV with, abortion and MAGA extremist messaging, just like they were in a lot of these other races. I do think we've talked a lot about kind of some of the messaging problems on the Republican side, and that they didn't emphasize, cost of living like they should have, and it was all about taxes. But I think if you look at some of these races across the state that were in play, that the Democrats were spending a lot of money on, and they were using this message of, all Republicans are MAGA extremists. I think that was a mistake on their part. I think they leaned way too hard into that. And you look at how Trump performed statewide. I mean, he went from, losing by 17 points 4 years ago to where now it's looking like he probably lost by, around 8 points. That was a dramatic shift. And I think that the Democrats just expected, oh, nobody likes Trump. Everybody hates him. Like, he's going to lose by 17 points again. Well, that wasn't the case. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many of these races were a lot closer than people expected.
Well, Michael, remember when we previewed that Think Big America document that they use at the DNC, even Pritzker's own people said it is difficult to make voters think that Republicans are MAGA. I mean, you go back to that presentation, they even admitted it's difficult to tie Republicans to MAGA, but you need to, according to them, because once voters think somebody's MAGA, they vote them out. They don't like them. So even in that document, they admitted it's difficult to do, and yet you're right. Democrats did a lot of copy paste, which we're going to talk about in our next topic, so I'll save it for that. But you're right, it did hurt them in some of these races. Before we go to you guys, I just want to say Patrick brought up, he said that Gabby's a model for the future and a rising star, which I agree with. I think two others need to be mentioned here as well who had big wins. Jennifer Sanalitro, 148. Her district is not that Republican, yet she won by 16. I can't wait till we can break down these numbers by legislative district, which will take a month or two. I want to see how everybody else did in that district, but certainly the other Republicans in that district did not win by 16. So kudos to Sanalitro. In 82, Nicole Ha, another rising star in the Republican Party, won by 20. There is definitely a solid bench, and I mean that in a good way, being formed here in the state of Illinois with some of these high quality recruits. Republicans did a much better job over the last 2 years of recruiting better candidates. Chris, Nathan, what do you guys think?
My districts I want to shout out first is House District 52. We know our plan trusters are out there. Marty McLaughlin had nothing from the House Republicans, and he had support from a lot of outside groups. Everybody wrote him off, and he's pulling through right now. So I'm happy to see that. Hopefully he's able to hold on. I believe he will, but hopefully that'll happen. And my second district, House District 47, this is the lock that I had. I thought we were toast in this one. I figured, because me being the pessimist about suburban voters I am, I figured Wheaton's too far gone. We're putting millions of dollars into Jackie Williamson on the abortion issue. And, the fact that Amy Grant's even in this position, at least she's going to hold on. We're going to find out in about 11 minutes where things are at when DuPage County does their drop. But and the fact she's in this position is impressive as it is. So I do want to, as someone who wrote that district off and thought she'd be down by like 3 right now, the fact she's in this position is impressive.
Yeah, and Nathan, I know your big focus was Chicago, and we're going to give that its own special topic. So we'll save our Chicago school board races for that. Any other races you maybe saw on election night that were standing out to you?
No, I would just double up on two things that have already been said. One, Jennifer Sinalitro, she's
Hey, Marcus Brooklyn. Sorry, my bad.
No worries. That back in 22, she was one of 17 races, the only of 17 races that the PAC that I ran invested in who won. And so to see her continue to win and do so in a bigger way is good. And then Kevin Schmidt's the other one. He's one who we chose not to invest in 2022. He won, and he was also one this cycle who I didn't think would be back. So that's good.
Okay. Liz Bishop, kudos to her in 76, obviously being only down 1%. It's not going to go our way with VBM, so that one's not a win, but being within, at this point, being 1% down, especially when a lot of people kind of wrote the race off towards the end, kudos to her and her team. I know the last two, Liz put in a loan of her own. Sue Resin came in with some money. They were able to go up and put up a little bit of TV in that race. Usually I'm telling my candidates, don't do that. Don't put another mortgage in your house. Don't risk it like that. But they were able to get that race close, considering a lot of the outside groups that kind of moved on from that race in the final weeks. So kudos to Liz Bishop and her team in 76 as well. All right, let's talk broad topics. Number one on the broad topic, let's talk about the Democrat side. Are the Democrats going to regret not taking Illinois more seriously? We talked about this a little bit in our recap video. We talked about it the last couple of weeks on these podcasts. Pritzker, if you look at the money he invested, it was not to the level that he usually invests in Illinois races. We've all been talking about, maybe not all of us, but most of us have been talking about how Democrats got really cocky, really overconfident. They started to pull that back in the final 10, 20 days or so, but they were cocky for ever since the switch from Harris, so much so that they were sending volunteers out of the state. In the final GOTV weekend, they sent 2,300 Democratic volunteers to Michigan and Wisconsin who weren't here instead. 60,000 doors they knocked on that could have been knocked here in Illinois. In all, they reported 8,000 volunteers knocking on 215,000 doors outside of Illinois that could have happened in Illinois. Would we be talking about pickups by the House Democrats if they had kept those resources here, let alone the dozens of high-level Democrats who went around the country campaigning for Harris? And as we already started talking about, Democrats absolutely focused on the wrong message. Over and over, we said it, that abortion was not the issue that was driving this election. And wouldn't you know it, the exit polls showed it was the economy, it was immigration. Abortion was just 11%, the top issue for 11% of voters. What we've been saying for a while, and it yet again played out as we said it would. Do you think there's going to be some regrets here from Democrats that they could have done better and they would have actually picked up some seats? Again, they may still pick up seats. We're waiting on those 4, but at the moment, they haven't picked up any. What do you guys think?
I think they should have regrets. I mean, looks like a lot of these races that they were trying to flip, they're not going to be successful in. And then, the margins on some of these other races, like we talked about, having been as close as they are. And I think one thing too is, Trump got 2.3 million votes in the state of Illinois. He got 600,000 more votes than Darren Bailey did when he ran for governor 2 years ago. It's a poor.
The only problem with that is you can't compare presidential to gubernatorial. It's the only thing I'll
say.
Well,
obviously those people exist and they're out there. They did not vote 2 years ago, in most instances, I would say, and it's important that we kind of do the work to identify who those people are and make sure that they get out in 2 years.
Well, yeah, and we'll talk about the Republican side next. Right now, we're talking about the Democrat side and the mistakes they made. We look at how close these 4 races are. You telling me that if they took these volunteers and knocked on doors in Barrington against McLaughlin, if they knocked on doors and more doors in Wheaton, if they went down to Schmidt's district by you, Michael, you don't think that these resources staying here could have flipped these seats? If Republicans were winning by 4 or 5 points in these races, which Schmidt I know is, okay, cool, fine. It didn't really matter. But all these races, at least 3 of them, are coming down to 1 or 2%. And Democrats could have flipped 1 or 2% if they focused more on these races.
And one of the problems, I think you're right. I think there is going to be a lot of regrets amongst the Democratic Party caucus, and the Democratic Party infrastructure over the next couple of months. If they're able to pick off Amy Grant or Schweitzer, one of those races, it'll be a little bit less because we're always going to have 2026 to come back and try again. But one of the issues is that the Democratic Party locally used to be such a locally focused apparatus that they cared about their local races, they cared about the people they endorsed, they cared about the state house, the county, all those sorts of things. Because of the nationalization of all politics, you end up in this scenario where Democratic Party activist base is less and less concerned more so with knocking on doors in Will County for the county clerk candidate or in DuPage County for Jackie Williamson or one of those things. They're not really focused on those sorts of things. They want to drive up to Michigan and knock doors for Kamala Harris. They don't want to knock doors in Lake County. They want to go drive up to Wisconsin and knock doors for Kamala Harris because of how nationalized politics has gotten. And the Democratic Party is realizing that concern. There are a lot of races in Chicago with these school board elections, I'm sure, where the Democratic Party apparatus, if it was stronger, they could have moved votes one way or the other, depending on who their candidate was supporting. So I think that there is going to be some regrets. The system has to change if you're a Democrat in this party because the messaging you had this cycle just didn't work. It was supposed to be massive. I expected it to be massive, and it didn't happen. So the Democratic Party needs to take a look at itself in this state.
So we're recording this Thursday afternoon. So I'm actually going to talk to the speaker. I'm scheduled to talk to the speaker Friday morning. And when I ask him this question, he's probably going to tell me, Patrick, we spent $12 million or whatever that number is in Illinois. And I don't do a very good Chris Welch, but he's going to tell me we took everything seriously. And I'm a media guy, not a field guy. So I don't know that knocking on doors in Barrington and 3 days before the election is going to change a lot of minds. But I certainly think that there's a perception that they didn't take it seriously, that they should have been focused on Maria Peterson and Harry Benton and these these races that they had a chance to pick up. Was the die cast by the last weekend? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm also interested as to why they thought and continue to think that abortion is the golden ticket. I'm sure that, and Collin, this from looking at the data and when people are asked what their top issues are, abortion is what, fourth, fifth, right? It's not one of the major issues, but when you go into a focus group and you prompt people on it, it brings serious emotional response from people. So I think that the Democrat strategy was, if we prompt these women on abortion and make it look like Marty McLaughlin and Dennis Rebelletti and all of these other Republicans are complete wackos and want you to use a coat hanger in a closet somewhere, it will scare them into voting for Democrats. I don't think it worked, and I do think Democrats should be held to the fire a little bit for the way that they produce some of these tactics. I mean, essentially making up Dennis Rebelletti's abortion position as being completely extreme because he wrote a check to Mike Bost in the primary. So you associate with Mike Bost, so you must be as crazy as him. I like Mike Bost a lot. We were jostling each other on the radio on Tuesday and had a good time doing it. I disagree with him on a lot of these things, especially on the top of the ticket. It doesn't mean that I associate myself with everything he says or believes, and it doesn't mean that Dennis Rebelletti associates himself with everything he says or believes. But the problem is Republicans have no money to push back on the BS. And that's what kills them in the end, is Democrats can say whatever the hell they want and they're completely unchecked.
Yeah, and just so you know, when you talk to Welsh, the numbers I gave you, the overall numbers, the 215,000 doors were through the whole election. So it wasn't just the final weekend. They were doing this for months leading up. So just to clarify that yeah, in the final weekend, is this going to make the difference? Maybe not. But 215,000 doors over the 6 weeks or 8 weeks leading to election day, that absolutely could make the difference. Mark, go ahead.
Look, if everything was reversed and I'm running the Republicans and we have 80 seats and the presidency's at stake, which is more important than Marty McLaughlin's seat, yeah, guess what? I sent people to try to win Wisconsin or Michigan because I don't need 81 or 82. And by the way, they spent, I was just looking up, over $2.1 million on Maria Peterson. If she can't win with $2.1 million, at some point it's on to the candidate and everything else. So could they have done more and squeezed out, one or two more, depending on all this shakes out? Maybe, but I don't think it's a horrible play to put your resources, if you stand back and really look at what we're doing this for, You're trying to move the country in a direction. And I know if I was the Republican leader and the swing state was next to me and I had a super duper majority, I'd be more concerned about the swing state than I was my own state. Either way, he walks back with 80 seats and he can do whatever he wants. It might even be easier for him if he has 80 versus 81 or 82, frankly.
Yeah, fair enough.
I would say so what Chris's point a minute ago was a good one in terms of messaging. And, I'd never thought about the pull by, young campaign workers these days or activists to go work for the big show rather than do the boring stuff locally. I never thought about that. But, what I thought was kind of interesting, and maybe people that talk to JB Pritzker more than I do, which is never on my part, can understand this a little bit more. But I was pretty shocked at his statement that he put out yesterday, and in the tone that it took, because, and well, Gavin Newsom too. But if I'm JB Pritzker, I'm maybe looking in the mirror, and I tweeted this at him, by the way. I'm looking in the mirror, with some serious questions as to this abortion, this carnival barkers, all of this crazy language. I think people are getting tired of it. And maybe in a state that's very blue like Illinois, it in the end doesn't matter for Democrats, but I feel like more and more people are getting tired of it. And I'm not sure JB's getting the hint.
Oh, he's only going to ramp that stuff up. He's only going to ramp that up now.
Yeah. He absolutely will, but I think Nathan is right, though. I mean, I think if we don't have this in the agenda, and we probably don't have time for it, but you want to talk winners and losers from the election, Pritzker's got to be one of both a winner and a loser at the same time. Because on the loser side of the equation, Pritzker was the guy pushing for the incendiary language, pushing for Democrats to do that more, pushing for the abortion message. I mean, a lot of this is straight out of Pritzker's playbook, and it didn't work. He
guaranteed. I say it. Sorry, Collin. I saved the tweet. It was back on like August 8th. He guaranteed that Kamala and Tim Walz would run the table on the blue wall. Guaranteed it. He tweeted it out.
Nice.
Didn't happen.
All right. Well, this topic is guaranteed to generate a lot of discussion. So let's talk about it. There was a lot of spin immediately after this election about how great of a job Tony McCombie and the House Republicans did. I mean, the votes weren't even being counted from election night, let alone the VBMs and provisionals that we're still waiting on today. And already the spin was happening. Our buddy here, Patrick Pfingsten, has run with that spin. His best friend, Rich Miller, and Cat Fax ran with the spin.
Nobody's me on anything, pal.
All right.
Me anywhere. They haven't even talked.
Hold on. My show. Hold on. No, my show. I could just clip this out. My show. Let me intro this, and then you can go in and defend yourself. So the spin was that Republicans never planned on picking up seats. That because of gerrymandering in the finances, we were never ever going to pick up seats. So this was a huge win for Republicans. They're outperforming expectations, which is not true. Tony McCombie came out all year saying we would pick up 5 seats with 2 sleepers. And then a few weeks ago, she changed it and said, no, now it's 4 seats with 2 sleepers. All the way through Election Day, that was the expectation, not, hey, maybe we'll pick up some seats. So let's just level set that is absolutely not true, that the expectation was we'd never pick up seats, number one. Number two, we just talked about all the mistakes Democrats did in this election. We talked about how Donald Trump massively overperformed in the state of Illinois. And yet we're not talking about any pickups by Republicans. And if you want to go specific rather than broadly, I'll go specific. Republicans missed it on 76. They pulled out on Liz Bishop when that became the closest race. I have no problem with Gabby Shanahan. I gave her kudos in the beginning of this show. I did it multiple times. I love Gabby. But a lot of resources spent for Desi Anderson, for Gabby in her race, especially Nicole Laha, who I love, but she won by 20. You didn't need to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in that race. There was absolutely a misallocation of funds, and where that money went and where it didn't. We may get lucky and hold on to multiple seats that we probably could have and still can lose. But that money certainly wasn't spent for Grant and McLaughlin, who House Republicans completely abandoned. So if they hold on, it's not because of HRO and Tony McCombie, and we still might lose 1 or 2 seats. We'll see what happens. There was an absolute misallocation of resources. There was bad messaging. I know, Mark, you and I thought about that in the past, but in most of the races, there was bad messaging, even in the press release. The night of the election, I feel like they're trolling us at this point. The press release from McCombie is House Republicans remain committed to delivering economic growth, ending corruption, and putting Illinois families first. It's like you can't even hold a gun to their head and make them say the phrase cost of living. absolutely has been a struggle on messaging this entire election. And our grassroots, I think we can all agree, is fractured and leading us to having a limited volunteer base where it's mostly staffers and family members knocking on doors with these hardworking candidates. We don't have the grassroots that we need to win. There are reasons why we didn't pick up seats, but I don't think you can spin this as a massive victory or a big victory, which is what Tony McCombie and the House Republicans are trying to spin it as. I don't think you can spin it that way. Because I called you out, Patrick, you get to go first in your response.
Well, first of all, I am not responsible for your beef with Tony McCombie. So let's put that out there first. That's not my issue. That's your issue. Secondly, House Republicans have not been playing ball with me throughout this entire campaign. I didn't. The executive director of the House Republicans literally never talked to me. Literally never returned a call, a text, or email until I saw him in the field last weekend. Okay, so I'm not taking anybody's spin here. Okay, and let's also stipulate the fact that I've been echoing the exact same things that you just talked about for the last 2 minutes this entire campaign. I've been the guy running around for 2 years saying House Republicans are about to get their asses kicked, right? I've been saying that. And I've been saying it from the start. I've been talking about their message problems. I've been talking about their field problems. I've been talking about their candidate problems. I've been talking about HRO problems from the start until this last week. Everyone was convinced that House Republicans were going to lose.
Not everyone.
4 or 5.
Not everyone. You were convinced. Not everyone.
The consensus.
Fine, fair. Consensus was that House Republicans were going to get their heads bashed in with a baseball bat. And to come out flat is absolutely a win in expectations. And yeah, McCombie's been on her PR trying to spin the hopium the last few months with the idea that they were going to pick up seats. Tom Cross was doing that in 2006, dude. That's how they always do it. It's not something you take seriously. And if you do, you're playing.
So we don't take her own words seriously, is what you're saying.
I don't take that spin seriously. I never take that spin seriously. I look at the facts.
So the expectation, so the fact that they overperformed your low expectations means to you that they had a great election night.
They overperformed the consensus expectations. I didn't say they had a great election day because they should have picked up some of these seats. There's no reason Liz Bishop lost. There's little reason Gabby Shanahan lost other than the pile of money that got spent against her. I mean, there were things.
They completely skipped House District 666, which ended up being our third best Republican challenger numbers, and Republicans didn't spend a penny in that race.
I've been sitting here for the last year.
So how do you say it's a victory then?
Because I didn't say it was a victory. I said that they're holding at 40 when you were looking at losing 4 or 5 seats 6 months ago. And in the world of expectations, when the consensus was that they were going to get their asses kicked, they were going to lose 2 or 3 or 4 seats as of this week, and they come out even with Donald Trump winning the presidency, with all of the movement against them, all of the money against them in this state. It was absolutely holding serve is a positive for McCombie, because if she would have gotten her brain beaten in by Democrats and lost those 4 seats, we would have been looking at House Republican leader Blaine Willauer next year.
God forbid.
Well, that also happened. Chris, let's let Mark go too, because I'm sure he wants to disagree with me as well.
Well, number one, I mean, we hit it. The consensus was that the House Republicans were going to get their butts handed to them. So you can't say holding serve is some big victory. But I think you may have thought we were going to pick up seats, but they may have done better. They did much better than expectations. Nicole House race specific, I have a little bit more info on this. The generic in that district is going to be similar to Jackie Haas's. So you can't fault the candidate for dramatically overperforming. You can't fault the candidate for raising her own money and then cutting $60,000 worth of checks back to HRO, and then just being a good candidate that's not knocking doors.
Which I didn't do.
What's that?
Which I didn't do.
Well, but you're saying misallocation of resources. When the first poll comes back and you're up 7 points and it's August, we just had the switch to Kamala. It's DuPage County, half about DuPage County in an area that generally doesn't like Trump, and you didn't know if it was going to break towards Trump or break towards Kamala, and you have an opponent that's a wild card that might have access to big dollars internationally anyway. Look, it's a Jackie Haas district. Believe that. Most importantly, she raised her own money. What's she supposed to do?
That was texted to us after the last time we talked about this race. I'm talking about there was what $500,000 spent on that race. So yes, Nicola Ha put in 60. She raised her own money, but HRO came in with big six figures in that race, well on top of Nicola Ha's money. I have no problem.
No. She raised a few $100,000 on her own, but we'll move on from there. We'll agree to disagree. My understanding is Grant had staffers in the district, so I don't know if Grant was abandoned. But probably if you're going
the last
back,
money they spent on that race was the first week of October. They spent the money on a poll with you guys at the very end, but otherwise they pulled all their spending in that race over the final 3 to 4 weeks.
The Bishop race by the numbers doesn't look like that's the race that's going to break our way. If you could go back into August and say Bishop is going to be the closest, you go all in. But you have Bishop, you have Shanahan, you have Rebeletti, which turned out to be horrific candidates matter. In the 66, my understanding is it really wasn't a candidate that was on board with everything. No. I was telling people
Parman was not a good candidate. I mean, she was our problem there was we didn't recruit a good candidate way back when it was petition season.
Sure. No, yeah, I will agree with that. So if we could go back in time and funnel all our resources to Bishop and Shanahan, and maybe that's what we need to do is make more decisions more quickly as a party because we don't have the resources. But I mean, look, we lost the Rebeletti seat by a couple hundred votes last time. He loses by 8, and we put a lot of money there. So the money cannon that the Democrats had, it's hard to contend with that. And you look at all these other races where with the Schmidt race with Greenwood on network TV. You look at my friends down in Springfield are like, holy cow, all I see on TV is how horrible a person Brandon is, and it's all Clem. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of incoming fire, and you have a tenth of what the other side has. It's not easy to make decisions. You have to go where the data flows. Bishop ended up being closer than probably what the baseline number said. You have a college town in there. You probably expect more out of a college town in a presidential year. I would have been wrong. I would not have expected Bishop to be as close as it is. I think Demmer lost that seat by like 7 points. He was the best statewide 2 years ago. I wouldn't have expected that one to be in play as much as it was. But, it's easier to look at it in the past. So I don't disagree with you so much. But I think the probably the place that you're the most correct on is we need to find a way, if we're going to have so much power against us, we need to find a way to target just 1 or 2 seats and really go all in instead of maybe a little bit for Kevin. But you got the people downstate that really want us to go for that seat and some of the other.
I have no problem with the money spent on Shanahan. That makes a lot of sense. If you're going to pick up seats, you got to invest somewhere. So notice, I don't have a problem with the money going into Shanahan. I think the focus was too much there. You look at all the ads that came out in the final 3 weeks, it was Nicola Ha and Gabby Shanahan. The focus was on those 2 races more than any other race. And again, you're talking about Nicola Ha from a pullback in August that might have scared you. Okay. But in the final month and a half, they were still dumping money and effort into Nicola Ha. In the final 6 weeks of that race, we were still dumping a ton of resources in the race. Again, I love Nicole. This is not an attack on her side and her team. I think maybe, forgive me, I don't know if you, Mark, and some others were involved. I love what you guys did there. No problems. It's just from the party level, I'm questioning how we allocated our resources, putting it into Desi Anderson, putting it into sort of our friends, but not putting it into people who maybe aren't our friends. If you're going to be the Republican leader, you've got to be able to make objective decisions instead of spending money in your clique and not outside your clique. That is my frustration, and it's not only me, because after I came out with my rant, my phone has been blowing up for the last day and a half. A lot of people agree with that if we're going to be a leader, then you've got to be more objective with where you do and don't spend your money. It was wasted on Anderson. All of us said that race was never in play. We talked about, at least me, I've been saying for a while, Haas was never in play. I've been saying for a while, Laha was never in play. This isn't stuff we just started saying today. We've been begging them to focus on 66. We've been begging them to focus on 76. We did not just start talking about this in the last few days. I'm on record. These podcasts are all public. I've been saying this for months.
Well,
all right, let's let the other 3 talk.
There were people that were trying to sell me on the fact that the 76th was never in play. And I pushed back on that for a long time just because of blue collar voters who loved Lance Yadnock, who weren't going to get on board with Murray Briel. And especially when Harris got in the race, that she was going to underperform Biden, who had this like magic touch with blue collar voters. So I for one thought they should have been playing a lot harder in that district, especially because you don't have broadcast down there because you get Chicago TV down there. So they really had to go hard in the district, and they certainly didn't go hard enough. But my point is, I have been as critical as anyone of the way HRO has run this cycle. But to say that it's all still a disaster because they did better than expectation, I think is disingenuous on your part.
No, I disagree with you saying it's disingenuous by me. You said that they were going to lose seats. I did not say they were going to lose seats. So let's be clear.
I said they were going to lose seats.
They beat your expectations. They didn't beat my expectations. And I think if we're going to ever win in this state, I'm sick and tired of being the loser party where our expectations are, oh, hopefully we don't lose seats. I mean, this is where it comes down to for me is if we're going to ever start winning in this state, let's stop being good with good enough. I could get on board. I could get on board with they did better than some people thought they would do. But you know what? Donald Trump bid 9 points better in the state, and we still didn't pick up any seats. If we're ever going to crawl to the super minority, we got to set higher expectations. We got to actually go pick up some damn seats and stop being, oh, look, we didn't lose any seats this year. Is Tony McCombie the big winner because we didn't lose any seats?
Well, that's a hell of a lot better than
I'm sick and tired of this loser mentality.
Well, my thing about this is that you can't come out with a statement the day after the election when you're still counting votes and say this. I'm not saying you said this is what McCombie said. You can't come out with a statement and say we're doing great right now when there's still a chance that Amy Grant could lose, Marty McLaughlin could lose, Schweitzer could lose. I mean, all these things are possible. You can't say we're doing tremendous right now when those things are still in play. You have to say things are looking good right now. We're going to see what happens. But we can't come out and say this has been a fantastic cycle for the House GOP until every ballot's been counted and we can count Amy Grant, Marty McLaughlin, and Brandon Schweitzer amongst the many are called, but few are chosen of the House GOP. So I think we need to wait till all the results are in, and then we can say whether or not the House had a good cycle. Either way, I still agree with Collin on this. While I was expecting a bad night for the House, you can't say we're picking up 4, we're picking up 5, because that's just too high of a lofty goal. You can say we're going to play in these seats. We hope to pick some up, 2, 3 maybe, and then if you break even, it's like it was a rough night, but it could have been worse. You can't start that high and end here. That gap's too large. That's where my problem.
All right, let me close this down on this. We can move on to other topics. 2 points. One, Pfingsten brought up my beef with McCombie. Just to be clear, Tony McCombie and I have never spoken. There isn't a public beef between the two of us. And I think you can all agree, I've been very, very good. I have reasons, which Patrick knows, other people may not be aware. I have reasons where I could have been bashing McCombie and HRO all election cycle because she has come after me and my company a couple times, and I haven't done it. I waited till after Election Day because I'm a team player. I did not attack our fellow Republicans. I did not go after HRO and McCombie. Yes, I tweaked when we weren't doing things as well as we should have, but I could have been bashing him the whole election, and people, personally, I could have. But I didn't. I waited till after Election Day. Let's make that clear. When it won't hurt Republicans, now I'm going to talk about how we need to do better. Last thing we're going to say on this topic, I'll have Lane bring this up in post. The mission, I already said it before, the mission accomplished banner with George Bush. I am sick and tired of, look at, mission accomplished. They put out a press release that declared victory because they didn't lose seats. At some point, if we're ever going to crawl out of the super minority and be relevant in this state, victory means actually winning some seats. Let's stop being okay with, oh, we didn't lose. If we're ever going to do better in this state, maybe let's start to actually play for some wins. Let's move on. Thank you guys for the passion, and that was a good discussion. All right, let's go to, I know, Nathan, you've been waiting to talk about this, the Chicago school board elections. Clearly, this was a bad night yet again for CTU and Brandon Johnson. I don't think Brandon Johnson has good nights, but whatever, where they only got 3 of their challenged candidates, 4 total, but 1 was uncontested. 3 of their 9 contested candidates by CTU got across the finish line. That's an abysmal performance in a city like Chicago. Nathan, tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, I think you're right, Collin. But just to take it a step further, if you look at in 2 of those districts, 2 of the 3 that they won, so they barely won. Jennifer Custer and won 51-49, so that's a coin flip. They could have lost that one. District 2, where we had 4 candidates, so maybe next time we need to do a little bit of consolidating. But the 3 non-CTU candidates represented 58% of the vote in that district. So you run a more consolidated field, you beat CTU in that district, they walk away with maybe 1 seat at the end of the day. So, I was part of the Urban Center Action PAC. I think everyone painted this as a school choice versus CTU fight. It was far from that. Our strategy was, we knew how unpopular Brandon Johnson was, thanks to I think Mark Batinick's poll on Brandon Johnson, and we knew if we could tie the CTU candidates directly to Brandon Johnson, a vote for the CTU candidate is a vote for more of the chaos that Brandon Johnson brings, we would be in pretty good shape. But then we also needed to tie our candidates to this message of these guys will say no more to Brandon Johnson. I think we did a good job. We got some help from the missteps of Stacey Davis Gates and Brandon Johnson, ousting their handpicked board 3 weeks before the election, trying to overthrow the Hispanic, chief executive officer of the district, and everything else that comes with the daily chaos of Mayor Johnson. So, I said this to a couple of other people. I think this election proved that CTU is not inevitable. If anything, they're vulnerable, and probably more so than ever before. So, I'm sure we need to have a money discussion at some point, but if people are looking to put money into things, certainly they should put some money into winning some Republican legislative races, but also, put some money into what's going on in Chicago, into these school board races, because we're going to have 20. Actually, we'll have 21. We'll have 20 plus the citywide president's race in 2 years, and that'll require a ton of resources.
I don't have a lot on the races themselves because I was not tuned into those, but what I do have a pretty prolific Chicago Democrat Politico texted me video from the North Branch Library Division in Wells last Wednesday, the 30th. So while early voting was still going on, and the line was out the door around the school the entire day. And the belief, and I'm sure if there's any exit poll out there, it will make it clear that Brandon Johnson is driving people to the polls against him. He is easily the most toxic Democrat we've seen in this state since Rod Blagojevich. And really, Blagojevich didn't turn out to be that toxic to Democrats in 2010. So this is an opportunity for Republicans. If they're ever going to start to make some inroads into the city, right now you've got, is it only Brad Stevens that represents any part of the city of Chicago? I think that's
correct.
I think it's that district. And Trump won the 41st ward, which is right across the city limit from me. There are opportunities here to make Brandon Johnson the state boogeyman and use him as everything that is wrong with Democrats in this state and Democrats in this country. And you all need to look at those school board races to see exactly how toxic Brandon Johnson and CTU are in what is one of the most liberal cities in America.
And honestly, it's honestly even worse for the CTU, because in District 1, the Custer seat, Custer was backed by both the CTU and the conservative trade unions. So it's not like she was purely like a progressive candidate for that district. It was more so that the CTU endorsed her, but a lot of people endorsed her. So she's not going to be some CTU acolyte in that seat either. So you're talking like 2 seats at this point, won by a plurality. So it was not a good night for the CTU. I do agree with Patrick that the numbers are stark in the city. Even Mike Madigan's 13th ward, 48% of the vote for the Orange Man. I mean, this is incredible stuff. Now you have to understand, not all of this is going to help the Republican Party. The Chicago Republican Party is mostly run by jamokes. I don't care if they don't like the fact that I said that. They're mostly run by jamokes. So you're not going to see any real gravitation towards the down ballot Republican Party anytime soon. But there are things going on in Chicago that gear up for a 2027 mayoral election where, God forbid, Paul Vallas ever runs again for anything, but you could get somebody conservative like that elected mayor of Chicago with that type of support based on the way things are going.
I think Susana Mendoza would be a perfect candidate.
I agree.
Mark's been trying to jump in. Go ahead, Mark.
No, that's fine. I think Susana Mendoza would be great for that too. She's pretty pragmatic and a number cruncher, and so she'd be great. But Nathan, I wanted to thank you so much. These things matter. I think the big miss that the Republican Party is doing is abandoning, or has done, is abandoning places like Chicago, just trying to win the burbs and everywhere else. We need to go onto their territory, and things like this are the type of things that matter and the type of races we can play in. The most racist thing that I can think of in the United States today is the disparity in the quality of education for minorities. And, Illinois is, if you read Wallet Hub, is 50th in racial economic equity, and a big part of it is because of the disparity in education. And it's something that I get pissed off that the Republican parties don't press on, that we don't have people going to the South suburbs and talk about the fact that the property tax rate in Harvey is 4 times what it is in Winnetka. Why don't you go look at their demographics of their population? Every kid deserves a quality education. CTU isn't giving it. We should run on the fact that, look, we're spending enough money there. You either do it or we're shutting you down and we're doing something different. That's our position. And we need to go to the neighborhoods and we tell the people that they have enough money to do it. They need to fix it, or you need to be offered the ability to go somewhere where your kid can get a quality education. Most racist thing in America right now is that.
And show that we actually care. I mean, this has been our problem.
Yeah.
Is show that you care. Even on economic messages. Where is that economic message that we're going to provide apprenticeships in these lower income communities? Where is that opportunity message when it comes to education? Republicans have done very bad on this nationwide, but especially here in Illinois, on that opportunity and showing we care about those lower income communities. We don't do that anywhere near enough, if ever.
Nope.
And if we start doing that, we might see some actual improvement.
And look, you get to 25%. Sorry, go ahead, Patrick.
It's the haves and the have-nots in our education system that blows my mind. That even with the difference in the tax rates, right? The New Trier kids are not getting the same educational. It's a completely different story for the New Trier kids as the Thornton fractional kids. Or we're spending more per pupil in the city of Chicago than essentially any school in America, any school district in America. And what are we showing for it? The downstate school districts where you've got corn making up the majority of your district and you're paying less because it's equalized for farmland. Rural schools get it less money, less quality education because of that. The equalize or the funding, I can't remember the name of it now. The bill, the
evidence-based formula.
Education, or the evidence-based formula is only exacerbating the haves and the have-nots. It's pumping more money in, but it's not helping everybody. And we have to find ways to help those who need it.
Yeah,
Let's let Nathan have the final word here, then we'll go to the next topic.
Yeah, no, I want to make 2 points. One is I've first of all, I've never met Patrick till now, but I have wanted to say for many
Consider
months.
yourself blessed.
Well, and I disagree with him on a lot, but I will say you were one of the very few reporters in the state who got it right, got the reporting right, the frame right on what was going on with Invest in Kids. So you were good on that. The other thing I would say is something that nobody else would know because it's not something we've talked about, but we had over 200 people out working election day in the city of Chicago, in the wards, working for these school board candidates. And I'm not sure what it looks like across the rest of the state for HRO and the Senate and everybody else, but to be able to pull together over 200 bodies on election day for these causes, I think is something that we need to talk about more from an organizing standpoint moving forward. So.
Yeah, there was a great operation that led to these wins. It didn't just happen. There was a great operation, multiple organizations, a lot of really smart people worked on this, and you see the results. It's great to see. All right, let's keep moving along. This one, let's do this quickly because we're almost out of time. But I know, Michael, you wanted to talk about this, and I do too. Down ballot, we did make some gains, small gains. Lake County, DuPage County, in the abortion zone, if you will, because you could draw a circle around, Northern Cook, most of Lake, most of DuPage, and that's like the only place the abortion message actually did kind of work. So we didn't see Mary Cole win. Grogan lost. DuPage, we lost another seat. We lost the coroner. Jorgensen lost, so not some good wins there. However, you look elsewhere, there were some wins. Will County, maybe we've got a county-wide win there. We might have picked up a third appellate court seat. No one talked about this, but all three were Dem seats. So we pick up one, that's still a pickup. McHenry County saw some big wins. They picked up 2 net seats on the county board. Michael, I know by you, there were big wins in Madison County and Randolph County, Jackson County, potentially, even for retention. Shannon O'Malley, check my Facebook. I went on a whole rant about Shannon O'Malley, which we don't have time for right now, but we might have even knocked him off the ballot, and he deserves to be out of retention as judge, but I wish I had time to go on that rant. So there were some wins down ballot. There were a few encouraging signs. Michael, go ahead and jump in. If the rest of you have thoughts, go ahead, but Michael, for sure, jump in quick, and then we can go to the next topic.
No, 2 of the ones that we were involved in that I was really proud of, Madison County, they had 7 county board districts up this election, 5 that were held by Republicans, 2 that were held by Democrats. We ran the table on those, won all 7. So they added 2 Republicans to the Madison County board, which is a big deal. And And then also Randolph County, they had a Democrat, state's attorney, Democrat corner. Some of the last kind of holdovers in that county that were of seats that were still held by Democrats. We were able to flip both of those as well. And then in Jackson County, state's attorney's race, as of right now, it's a tie. So, which is just, so we'll see what happens with these vote by mails that kind of trickle in over the course of the next 2 weeks. That could go either way.
Yeah, so you're seeing continued movement in the Metro East. I mean, listen, we know the next 4 years are still the Trump era. We're still going to struggle to pick up seats, a lot of seats over the next, especially 2 years, but possibly the next 4. But it's not all gone. In the exurbs, we did pretty dang well. In Metro East, we saw some more gains. We've seen movement. It's yes, in some counties like Lake and DuPage, we may still struggle a little bit for a couple more years, but it does not mean we just pack it in and say, okay, redistricting's bad for us. The numbers, the money's bad for us. Let's just pack it in and hope we get governor in 2030. There are absolutely wins out there on the table, and we got to go fight for them. All right, we only have a little bit of time, but we have to talk about these next 2 topics. So I know we're gonna have to do it faster than we'd like. But just before Election Day, the Friday before Election Day, wouldn't you know it? What many of us have been saying for a while. I think even Mark, you came on this podcast and said it. A lot of us have said that yes, this budget deficit that's coming up in the state of Illinois. Some are saying it was $1 billion. Many were saying it's going to be worse. And look at this. The governor's own GOMB comes out and says it's a projected $3+ billion budget for the next fiscal year. After that, in the coming years after that, it's going to get to 4 and 5. I have the numbers here, but I can't find them just yet. We're looking at massive budget deficits in the coming years. And this is, after many people have been saying, the only reason why the budget numbers in Illinois looked good for the last couple of years is we got to play with that federal money, so it made it look so much better than it actually was. Here we go. Reality has set in. That federal money has dried up, and our great fiscally responsible Governor Pritzker, suddenly now the emperor has no clothes. Mark, go ahead and start us off.
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, it took a little bit longer than I expected. When we had the massive inflation because of COVID, I don't want to get into the details of it, but because of the way our pension payment works, it actually opens up a whole bunch of new opportunity for spending that does, you can grow everything else in the budget with inflation, but when the pension payment that's somewhat fixed is a smaller percentage of the overall budget, it opens up new money. And we burnt through that, and we went on a spending spree. And when you chase people like Ken Griffin out of the state, and when you are openly chasing high income earners out of the state, and you're not attracting, the immigrants, the non-citizens that we're opening our doors for, we're spending billions on them and then chasing out billions of dollars from taxpayers. It's not a good recipe. And when you have inflation, it'll hit the budget, it'll hit the income side first, but eventually you got to give workers raises. The cost of things go up. It affects budgets. And over the last couple of years, you've seen it, and it's going to hit pretty hard. And frankly, I'm wondering if JB flips and runs for the Senate so that he can say, "Hey, I had a great 8 years. I balanced things up to the runner. This isn't my fault. I'm moving on." So I'll be interested to see where they're going to raise taxes, because that's what they're going to.
I mean, they're certainly going to try to do that. To everybody who's watching this, Patrick had a hard stop time, which he's gratefully, thank you, Patrick, for sticking around past that. But when you do need to go, we understand. Certainly feel free. But why don't you give your thoughts next, just in case you got to go?
Well, it's going to be a nightmare in Springfield in May. I mean, my goodness. I mean, it's there will not be enough cutting in the Democratic legislature in 2025, right? Even if the moderate House Democrats that started to make a little momentum when they almost tanked the business tax increase in May, even if someone starts listening to them, which I doubt they will, and they're going to be down Yednock next year, they're not going to be able to cut $3 billion out. Just that's the caucuses are too progressive. So then you're going to have to figure out where to fill that hole and who they're going to raise taxes on. They're not going to be able to get this millionaire tax done by May, because you've got to change the Constitution to do it. And the idea that that this is just going to be an easy negotiation and they're going to play it down, right? Democrats are going to play it down. These are early numbers. We'll put together a balanced budget. That's what we do every year. That's what we do every time. We've got all these credit rating upgrades, blah, 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 blah. That's what they're going to say, right? But it's going to be hell to get this thing done. And it doesn't get easier if you're JB Pritzker, which is part of the reason why, and he certainly sounded like a candidate for president today when he did his post-election press conference. I'm really starting to believe he doesn't run again in 2026.
Are you willing to say that I was right on something then?
I mean, I
I've
didn't.
been very nice to you, buddy. You can say I'm nice. I've been saying for a while that he's not going to run again because his team has been smart enough to see that this is coming. That if he leaves now, he can say, look, I did a great job. I balanced it. Everything's fine. If he sticks around for one more term, we've got we're going off the fiscal cliff. The next 4 to 6 years, we're going to have to pay the price for all of this spending.
And he certainly, and the thing that makes sense now that Trump won is Pritzker walks off that stage at the Bank of Springfield Center on January 11th, 2027, or whatever it is, walks across the street to the old state capitol and launches his campaign for president the next day. He doesn't need to stay in the media because plus it's going to be too many headaches to be governor of Illinois for the next 2 years. But he's got enough of a campaign operation. He's got enough money. He can put himself into the conversation. He can be the leader in the clubhouse for the Democratic nomination in January of 2027 and spend 2 years just rifling shots at Trump. And I'm starting to believe that we're going to have a 2026 free for all.
Yeah. I mean, listen, these numbers are bad and they're going to get worse. And we've been saying it for a long time. And we were called, the carnival barkers. These people always like to push their doom narratives. But it's true. And finally, now, of course, no one will ever give us credit for having been honest with the people of Illinois and saying that this was coming. But we weren't carnival barkers. We were simply telling the truth. And now that truth is finally coming out.
One thing that I want to add, and I think another time that I've been on here, I've been critical of the business community, in part as a former Illinois Chamber employee, although I'll give the Chamber their dues recently. They've got a little bit more fight in them. But I hope this is a wake-up call for Illinois' business community, particularly the ones that spend most of their time in Springfield, who love to go on nice trips with Governor Pritzker and the speaker and everybody else and tout all this stuff, and get fleeced during the spring every year.
Yep.
So Pritzker, everyone said everything on Pritzker that I agree with, but the other piece here is I hope this is a wake-up call for the business community.
I mean, I think Lou Sandoval has been a breath of fresh air there in the Chamber. I've got high hopes for him. And he came out and he even said it. He called this that Pritzker gaslighted. He used that term gaslighted and told us that the budget was balanced, which is true. I mean, you never saw that kind of language coming out of the Chamber before, though I love and respect, rest in peace, Todd. But this is a new era for the Chamber, and we're going to need it. We're going to need, I know TMA has been the forefront of fighting this, but some of the other groups were not. We're going to need more of these business groups to come out and step up. NFIB has been doing it a little bit. Now you see the Chamber doing it. We're going to need groups out there who are going to lead this fight because you're going to need some return to some sense of fiscal responsibility if we're going to make it through this.
And at least one of those major business groups has spent a lot of time cuddling up to the administration. And I'm sure that their members are not happy about that.
Yeah, we've certainly heard that. That's for sure. I mean, listen, we've had this conversation probably off camera more than on camera that the business groups we're talking about, like I'm going to just say it, IMA, they've got those are the big manufacturers, and so a lot of the things that Illinois does that hurt small businesses, they don't hurt those bigger manufacturers, and so they don't care. They don't fight a lot of those bills because these things that Springfield do, they're the nickel and dime stuff that frankly hurt those family-run small manufacturers who they're the ones who don't have these huge accounting or legal departments to handle all these onerous regulations that Springfield puts on them, and so they're the ones that are facing this. It's the small businesses, it's the local businesses that have taken the brunt of these hits, but that's the majority of our employers. Yeah. What's up, little buddy? So all the business community, the Chamber, the NFIB, all those guys can do everything that, behind the scenes to say, no, negotiate on these things. And then at the end of the day, if the IMA is standing up there with JB Pritzker at his budget signing press conference, JB Pritzker is able to say the business community was behind me. So, you've got to have some unity. Yeah, absolutely. And this is going to be a challenge. One of the things that they're going to go to is our next topic. Patrick, I know you got time or you got to go. Are you good? You're good? All right. We got two people on his screen. The talent level on Patrick Pfingsten's screen just increased exponentially over the last 30 seconds. But let's talk about this. Talk about missteps. So when the CTU came out and said that they were pushing JB Pritzker to try the progressive tax again, many of us looked at it, looked at it, and then got a giant smile on our faces, because it's clear Pritzker and the Democrats have been hinting that they're going to be coming back, trying to push the progressive tax yet again. But we were given a massive gift when the CTU came out and said, please, Pritzker, try the progressive tax again, because we beat it before. Now, how much easier is it going to be to beat it when now it's the CTU's progressive tax? It isn't Pritzker's fair tax. It's the CTU progressive tax now when they push it. And we haven't talked about it a lot, but there were 3 advisory referendums on the ballot in the state of Illinois that won that were saying, oh yeah, these are going to win big. Let me point something out. The millionaire tax advisory ballot measure, the one that said, hey, would you like to tax those millionaires so you can get a property tax break? It passed 60-40, only 60-40. You want to say that that's a win? That is absolutely not a win. When it was written so vaguely, hey, do you want to tax those scary rich guys who have all the money so you can get more property tax relief? It only passed 60-40. The fact that that only passed with that limited number, I think, spells doom for a fair tax / progressive tax. If that had to do 70-80% on the ballot this election statewide, if they were going to have any chance to pass that progressive tax. Pritzker said it, Democrats said it. The only way that they're going to find a path out of this quagmire that they are in is passing a constitutional amendment in 2026 that changes our tax structure in Illinois. And I think the fact that that millionaire tax only won 60.5 to 39.5, so it was by 21, not by 20, I think that spells doom for it. And then the CTU coming out pushing for it. I mean, this is a gift for the business community and the other groups who will stand toe to toe, hopefully, with Pritzker on this and beat him yet again. I don't know what you guys think, but I think that progressive tax fight is coming back, and it's coming back in 2026.
I think you missed the boat for the fair tax in the state of Illinois. It had to be 2020. The campaign got derailed because of COVID. They had to focus purely on TV. The year to do it, if you're the Democratic Party and J.B. Pritzker, was 2020. When they try and do it again, if they try and do it again, no matter how good the intentions might be of it, it's not going to pass. It's not. Not at this point.
You guys out? Thanks, Patrick. Anybody else have thoughts on this? I mean, Mark, you seem like a guy who's going to have thoughts on this.
For sure. I mean, I think it's a bad idea. It might be a short-term gain, short-term gain for the state financially, but then a long-term loss, right? You might get a temporary bump in revenue while people start to move out that would be affected by it. So it doesn't make sense from a long-term raising money. They may put it on there as a way to GOTV, maybe. I mean, that's what these advisory referendums were about. They were also about blocking a citizens referendum from getting on the ballot. So I'm not sure it's the wisest way to go, just raising taxes again. It'll be interesting to see how they patch this budget hole and what they do. It shouldn't be as hard as it is based on the trajectory, based on our pension, based on the savings from our pension payment being a smaller percentage of our overall budget. We have money that opened up in the budget, regardless of the free Fed money that we were getting because of COVID. So I don't know. I'll be interested to see what they do. They're in a little bit of a box. What I do hope is that the Republicans don't capitulate and help them out of that hole. We'll see.
I mean, look at, I had the numbers somewhere. I'm thinking oh, here we go. When Pritzker in fiscal year 2020, spending by the state of Illinois was at $40.1 billion. Now it's at $53.1. I mean, you talk about a massive increase in spending. This has not been a fiscally responsible administration with J.B. Pritzker. They just got bailed out by federal money, which we've been saying for a long time. And so this is not a fiscally responsible administration. And yeah, they're going to look to tax increases just like they always do. I hope they put this on the ballot. I mean, I'm almost afraid, I'm almost going to set a rule, don't talk about it anymore, because hopefully they put it on the ballot, because this was a big boon to Republicans the last time they put it on the ballot. It would be a boon to us again in 26 when we're having to run in the Trump election or the Trump era in 2026. Maybe the only thing that saves us if the Democrats put this on the ballot in Illinois and give us something to rally around as Republicans and as center-right candidates. So I hope they put it on the ballot, which means maybe we should stop talking about how bad of an idea it is.
The Lord knows Pritzker's comm staff is watching this right now. Hi.
Yeah, well, you look at, I mean, his old comm staff was much better than his new comm staff. So maybe they'll be dumb enough to put it out. We're going to find out. All right, we are way over our time. Everyone's been really patient with me, and thank you for that. Last thing I'll say is I don't care how tired you guys are. It's time to get back to work, because as the people on this podcast know, petitions are already being passed for the 2025 elections. And in fact, in some of these races, they're already put in. For the races that are in February, petitions have already been submitted. And the other races, they're being submitted in a couple weeks. We are already in the 2025 elections. And so while we don't have a lot of time to talk about it here on this podcast, we'll talk about it a lot more in the next 6 months. Election season is not over. You get to rest after April 1st. You don't get to rest yet because it's the local elections that impact the daily lives of working families in this state way more than any other election. These are also the elections where we can elect our bench. This is where we're going to find those next state rep candidates, those next congressional candidates, those next county candidates. They're going to come right here from these local elections. And guess what? Democrats are already ramped up. They already put out a press release that they are shifting now their focus to focus on municipal races. They're going to put time into it. They're going to put money into it, a massive resource organization behind it. This is not a situation where Republicans can be like, oh no, we don't play in local elections. Our entire party must mobilize and get involved in these local elections because April 1st, I think I'm getting that date right. I hope I am. The municipal races are going to be on the ballot, and we have got to play in those races and get good, mainstream, common sense, center-right leaders elected throughout the state. It is absolutely vital. So take some time with the family over the holidays, but otherwise, you've got to stay involved through April and then take your vacations. Is that it? I said it all. I mean, Chris, I know you're looking at Homer Glenn. I mean, you got 17 people.
I don't want to talk about Homer Glenn, Homer Township.
17 people filing for the trustees.
About that, Collin. I'm not doing it. I'm not talking about Homer Glenn and Homer Township.
Yeah, it's a mutiny on this podcast. I love it. All right, so I guess the point has been made. We can move on. Let's move to our final segments here and close down the podcast. As always, our last official segments where we have a little extra fun. Our OG and Clown of the Week. OG, if you don't know millennial slang or Gen Z slang, is that original gangster, someone who did something awesome. It could be this whole election. It could be in the last week, but somebody you think deserves some praise, somebody you think deserves some scorn as the Clown of the Week. Put your names in now. Go for it.
I'm gonna go.
Go ahead, Mark. All right.
I know what you're going to say. That's why I wanted to go first.
Oh, you want to go first? Go for it.
Look, I like what Schmidt did, but I think that's just a changing demographic down there. I mean, Brandon did an amazing job. And I mean this, Amy Grant, in a positive way. You are a political cockroach. They just can't kill you. You just keep coming back. It's amazing. But Marty McLaughlin, and I think Chris called it that he was going to win. I've been through that situation, and I probably had more help than he had, but was mostly on my own in a race in 2018, and having all that TV and mail slammed against you. It's not fun, but to stand up to that and come out what appears to be on top, whether it is or it isn't. He must have ran a great campaign. I wasn't there on the ground to see it, but wow, that is he's my OG of the week.
Nice, I like it. Michael, go ahead.
Well, I knew he was going to steal it, but I just let him do it. So, OG,
thank you, Michael.
Kevin Schmidt, it's got to be. I mean, look at what he was able to pull off and accomplish. That's a big deal, and I'm proud that he's still going to be my state rep. So that was good news. And I'm going to steal Nathan's Clown of the Week, I think, since Mark stole mine. And I'm going to say Brandon Johnson because of those Chicago school board races. I mean, just the hits keep coming for Brandon Johnson. He's just not having a good time up there.
Well, I mean, listen, to make it clear, not everybody said that those Republicans were to lose. I had Amy Grant winning. I had McLaughlin winning, Marin winning, sheesh. Schweizer winning. I had Schmidt winning, and a lot of us did. It was not the consensus that all four of these guys were going down. So I just want to make that clear. We had them winning.
My clowns of the week are all the county clerk's offices and election authorities, which have caused every political operative in the state strife over the past several days. I'm looking at you, Champaign County. I'm looking at you, East St. Louis Election Authority, making Michael Butler go there at like 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to figure out where the ballots are. I'm looking at you, DuPage County, for not putting your results up yet today when I was told it was going to be 4 o'clock. I need to know if Amy Grant lost yet.
And DuPage was one of the slowest coming in on election night. We were all waiting for DuPage. So, yeah, you're right about DuPage, too.
Yeah, and the vote by mail and the early voting was just sporadic when they were putting it in there. Nobody had any idea what was going on. Like Will County, it took like 20 minutes. No, it took like an hour and a half to put in the last 20 precincts for some reason. We need change in the county clerk's offices. Oh, geez, shout out Chicago and shout out suburban Cook County. Thank God they're not dealing with another contested primary again, because they were jokes during the primary. But now during this general election, everything seems to be going fine with the city of Chicago Board of Elections and the suburban Cook County clerk's office. So shout out to those people. You guys did good this cycle. You still gave me a heart attack in the primary, but we're doing better this time than the rest of the damn.
Chris, to your point, the Champaign County clerk, Aaron Ammons, came out and said that they gave themselves a B for how they handled election day. I mean, it was clown worthy for sure. So that's a very good nomination. What else? Who else has got stuff? Go ahead, guys.
Throw a nomination in for clown. Former Illinois resident, now resident of Martha's Vineyard, Barack Obama. I think that he went all in on cooing his own vice president, getting him out, only to have the person who he brought into power perform way worse than his vice president performed, at least in 2020. So I think this whole mystique of the Obamas is if not gone, significantly diminished moving forward. So he's a big time clown. I also think he's somebody who is, it's like an elite level athlete who's a terrible coach. I think he's a good politician, terrible at picking winners that are not named Barack Obama. So
fair. Well, and if you want to talk Chicago, I mean, I think Brandon Johnson, as always, is a permanent member of this list, but we haven't talked about it because we never had a chance. But not only was his school board president a horrible choice that he threw out there last second with no vetting, but now social media posts are surfacing on another one of his board members, Batista, who said a number of crazy things, anti-Israel posts. We don't have time to get into it, but I think yet again, another one of his choices for school board, his appointments, is being questioned, rightfully so. And not surprisingly, Susana Mendoza, one of the leaders of that questioning, because it's pretty clear at this point she's running for mayor. But yet another Brandon Johnson nomination. Anybody else have thoughts?
At some point, it's less about, oh, we just did poor vetting, and more so, oh no, this is actually just what we believe.
Or basically, listen, these are my friends, and these are the people I'm putting up. Well, then your friends believe like you do, and you're putting them up. It's not vetting that's the problem here. We know you by the people you hang out with.
Right.
Anybody else? I've got a couple, but anybody else have any clowns or OGs? All right, we good on that? All right, so I got a couple OGs. First, since this is the smoke-filled room, I want to give a congratulations to all of the guests we had of the smoke-filled room who won their elections on Tuesday. I want to list them all. Kevin Schmidt, Brandon Schweizer, Paul Jacobs, Andrew Chesney, Jason Bunting, Joe Sosnowski, David Fries, Travis Weaver, Patrick Windhorst, Amy Elick, Dan Ugasti, Charlie Meyer, Chris Balkema, Terry Bryant, Lee Arlano, Bob Berlin, Mike Quinlan, Patrick McCrae, all former SFR guests. Thank you guys for being on, and congratulations for your big wins on election night. You earned it. Good job winning. My second OG of the week nomination is going to be a weird one, but Change Illinois. Not a group I'm often going to say positive things about, but they put referendums on the ballot in 2 townships, which just happened to be the townships where Don Harmon and Chris Welch happen to live. And those fair maps referendums won big in those 2 townships. And I think we can all agree that good government starts with fixing the maps in this state and getting fair maps passed. And kudos to Change Illinois for putting those referendums on the ballot and being strategic. Putting it on those 2 townships was pretty damn smart, and I got to give them credit. In Oak Park Township, 81% supported fair maps, and Proviso, 73% supported fair maps. Kudos to Change Illinois for that. That's absolutely a good government thing that we can all get behind. My last clown of the week, we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but it's got to be Mike Hastings. More things have circulated. There's court documents out there where he told his wife, "You're going to get what's coming to you," called her fat and stupid in front of her children. There's just so much disgusting things in here from these court documents about what he's doing during these divorce proceedings with his wife. Mike Hastings absolutely should not be serving in the Illinois Senate. I'm sure you're going to see Don Harmon back him up, because that's what he does. He just backs up his caucus regardless of whether they should actually be an elected office or not. Mike Hastings deserves a massive Clown of the Week nomination. And gee, good look at this. Because there were no repercussions for his previous bad actions, he goes right back to it and gets even worse because he wasn't held responsible the last time. If you don't hold people responsible for the stupid and bad shit that they do, they're just going to double down, and we're seeing that right now with Hastings. So he gets another Clown of the Week nomination.
You just won by 12, by the way, Collin.
Yeah, well, still doesn't deserve to be there. All right, let's close this down. As always, our guests get a chance to give their closing thoughts on anything they want to talk about. We'll let our guests go last. So, Michael and Chris, you guys can start first. Michael, kick us off. Your final thoughts for the week.
Well, we survived another election cycle, and I'm glad that President Trump's going to be back in the White House. Hopefully, they take full advantage of that over the course of the next 2 years. And if you thought you were going to get a break, you're not, because it's municipals, municipals, municipals. So let's get after it.
No rest for the wicked. Chris, what do you got?
No, sir.
I wanted to say this during the podcast, but he left. Patrick Pfingsten, great drop of Thornton Fractional High School. That was, nobody ever talks about the TF North, TF South. That was a great call out. So Pfingsten, if you're watching this, well done, my friend. Other than that, make sure your guys are getting sleep. Spend a day this weekend if you're not going out and getting petitions for someone. Even take a nap. Like, spend some time outside. Go for a walk. Like, actually go out to the bar and get drunk or something. I don't know. Like, spend some time for yourself, please, over this next weekend or so. Everybody is exhausted right now. Some people are still out there working. I'm working right now for some reason by doing this podcast. Please take care of yourself. Do something enjoyable. Not everything's about politics.
Chris, you're having fun. You don't get paid for this. This is just fun time. This is your personal time. This is
I'm not getting paid. Could I be getting paid?
Nathan, thanks for coming on with us, buddy. What are your final thoughts for the week?
Yeah, sure. Despite some of the earlier comments at the top of the show, I do think that this coalition that just voted for Trump and voted in majorities for Republicans have an opportunity to kind of reset some things moving forward if we do it right over these next 2 years. So, I hope that I'm looking forward to that. I hope that Trump puts in some good people. I hope we get moving on policy and make some good action there. Besides that, Illinois basketball is back and they look pretty good so far. So if you're, the football team's kind of fallen down a little bit. So I'm refocusing my time to watching Illinois basketball.
Get to the glory days of 2004. Come on, let's do it. Mark, thanks for being with us. You get the final word. What's going on?
You may not realize this, but you are looking at a TF South graduate. So
Really?
wish Patrick was still on, so that's where my roots are. I don't know if I've ever been more optimistic for America, at least since I was a kid, than right now. I think I should have nominated possibly Elon Musk as OG of the week as well, because freedom of speech, the truth being out there, we have a huge opportunity. I want to echo what Nathan said. We have a huge opportunity to do some basic common sense things that everybody wants but was afraid to talk about, like men and women's sports, and just some, good schools for everybody, like some basic things, and calling out the left's BS that they've done for decades and decades. So I'm really optimistic for what the future holds. I'm looking forward to having RFK somewhat in the White House, orbit. So a lot of good things are going to come out of the next couple of years. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here. Shout out to Lane Davis, our producer. 81 episodes of this we have done. It is a ton of work pulling together the agenda, getting the guests, putting this together and putting it out. So thanks to Lane Davis and our team. And for all of you for watching and being with us. We're going to keep going with the Smoke-Filled Room. So we'll be back with you next week. In the meantime, as Chris said, take the weekend, go spend some time, then get right back at it on Monday. As I said, we're going to be back at this next week with the Smoke-Filled Room. Thank you all for being with us. We'll catch you next week. Catch you guys soon.